So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Morning, Villa fans. Let's try this one again. I had recorded this one last night and put it out for this morning, but whatever's happening with uploads when I pre-record episodes and then upload them afterwards, either the video is off sync or the video just freezes or the sound doesn't upload correctly. When I watch it back locally prior to uploading it, everything looks fine. So just said I'd pop on and do this one again because I think it's something that we want to keep an eye on, and as we go into next week, and I will just make sure that I have. Yeah, we got sound, brilliant. So it's something that we want to keep an eye on as we go into next week because, look, I suppose Aston Villa have been at the forefront of trying to renegotiate PSR rules. We know that there's PSR changes coming in. I think it's next year as well with regards to squad cap ratios and stuff like that, or squad cost ratios, should I say. There's also caps coming in for teams in Europe with regards to their squad cost ratios and the amount of money that they bring in. But we're going to kind of park the European side of things for a moment, albeit we will need to discuss the differences in money between the coefficient payments that will be given to certain teams, because it gets too murky and it gets too kind of convoluted to explain in one podcast otherwise. So let's take a little look at this. So I'm just really, what I want to do is I'm just going to bring up the article that we're going to discuss today, and that's the article that was in the Times yesterday, article written by Martin Ziegler, where it says the votes on proposal to give English clubs more financial muscle in Europe. And essentially, we'll read down through it because I don't want to misphrase anything that he says. So Premier League clubs will be asked next week to agree a new financial proposal aimed at boosting English sides' competitiveness in Europe. And I want you to remember that phrase there in a moment, because we're going to discuss why Crystal Palace of all teams are the team that want to implement this. The proposal put forward by Palace aims to give clubs such as Aston Villa, who were surprise qualifiers for the Champions League, surprise to some, I may add, not to us, given what we saw Villa play through the course of the season, I would say worthy qualifiers for the Champions League based on a 38-game season. Thank you very much, Mr. Ziegler. But it would look to give clubs such as Aston Villa more flexibility around spending and financial losses. UEFA's coefficient payments are based on a club's past 10 years of results in European competitions. And for the 2023-24 season, for example, Man City received 28 million, while Newcastle United were only given 3.8 million. Essentially, what that means is that based on your last 10 years, as it says here, you're given an increased payment in line with your coefficient to kind of reward you, I would say, for, I suppose, for continued participation in European competitions. And as we can see there, it's essentially a situation to allow the rich get richer and make sure that the upstarts can't really break in. And if they are going to break in, they're going to need to break in at the ground floor and work their way up. Kind of really takes the meritocracy out of it, but you know, we are where we are with regards to that. And look, it's also a massive difference. You know, you're talking about 24.2 million in the difference there, which is essentially the signing of a player or the signing of two squad players that may come in to help bolster squads. And as we know, with regards to injuries, with regards to like I suppose the rigors that are put on teams, that's quite a lot of money, and one or two extra players could be absolutely huge when you're looking at a Newcastle who were ravaged by injuries this year, and Aston Villa who were ravaged by injuries this year, and a Manchester City who, yes, had their injury issues, but were able to bring in high-class international players on huge wages that were bought for huge money because of their financial system, 115 charges aside. Palace's proposal, which targets the artificial impact of those coefficient payments, would alter the Premier League. Now, remember, it's the Premier League's profitability and sustainability rules, allowing clubs to claim the difference in coefficient funding between themselves and the top club in Europe as allowable losses. So essentially what that means is you qualify for Europe, you are allowed X amount difference. So the difference between you, what your coefficient payment is, and the top club in Europe is added onto your PSR. That's my understanding of it. And that seems to be everybody's understanding of it at the moment, which essentially means that you get a kind of a, if you want to call it a luxury tax that you're allowed put in there based on the fact that that you're playing in Europe. That could allow Aston Villa, that could allow Villa, who are believed to be close to the line in terms of breaching PSR's maximum 105 million losses over 3 years, an extra 20 to 30 million in allowable financial losses. I think it will be on the higher end of that. It will be almost akin to what Newcastle United had, essentially, because Villa have not had a proud European record in the last 10 years. Yes, we did very well last season, but our coefficient is still very low. Yeah, so Palace chairman here, Steve Parish, has long argued that UEFA's coefficient payments are unfair and unlike the Premier League's payment structures, are not based on merit according to the season just played, which I would have to 100% agree. And the proposal will go to the Premier League's annual meeting next week, where, as revealed by the Times this month, Villa will also try to convince clubs to raise the PSR limit from 105 million to 135 million. Whoops. The move by Palace is regarded as an alternative plan that will help Villa but not change the general PSR limit. Right. Let's try and pick into this. I'm going to bring this off the screen here. We're going to try and pick into this for a moment. And we're going to come back. We're going to look at we won't. Let's remind ourselves as to what Villa were pushing for previously, and then we'll discuss the two of them together. So if you guys might remember, back at the start of May, it was reported by the Birmingham Mail that Aston Villa are, and this is John Towley's very good article, Aston Villa are reportedly pushing for the Premier League to raise the minimum limit, the maximum limit of permitted losses for the final season of its profitability and sustainability rules. So remember, Crystal Palace's proposal is only for the final season of the PSR rules prior to coming into the squad cost ratio model. Which happens in 25-26, and Aston Villa's proposal is for that last season as well, which will happen 25-26, which will happen in this season, and will then move to the squad cost in 25-26 if that ever is implemented. So it says here, PSR will be changed for the 25-26 season with a new squad cost rule set to be introduced that limits clubs to spending a maximum of 85% of their revenue on wages, transfers, and agent fees. Reports emerged on Monday that Premier League clubs had voted 16-3 that they wished to see the introduction of a spending cap. Chelsea were the 20th club who abstained from the voting, while Villa, as well as both clubs from Manchester, with Villa as well as both clubs from Manchester defeated. So we voted against the squad cost ratio. The cap would involve the teams at the top being able to spend on transfer fees and salaries a multiple of what the bottom club in the division earns. Last year's basement side Southampton made just over 100 million. The proposals are with creating a fairer financial landscape to the Premier League, with the Premier League in mind. For many, Villa's call to vote against this came as a surprise. The Times now claim that Villa want to increase the allowed losses over 3 years by an additional 25 million. From 105 million to 135, and Villa are said to have raised the issue with clubs this week for the limit to be increased. So that's basically what they're referring to there regards to this, and that is something I think the Villa are going to be looking to convince in the coming days, weeks, and probably at the Premier League meeting to see if they can maybe force a vote on that as well, as Crystal Palace's vote. So, why are these two of? So I suppose why wouldn't somebody vote for 135 as 100 as opposed to 105 number for the PSR? I don't know. I would imagine every single team would vote for that. If you don't, you're like a turkey voting for Christmas. It makes absolutely no sense to me that you would not vote for that. For the Aston Villa model. So I can fully understand that and why people would want to vote for that. I don't know if it gets brought to a vote. I don't know if Villa can convince people to bring that one to a vote. But I think that is that has its merits. It's a 1 year only kind of situation. It increases the spending by 30 million. And I would imagine that if that was put forward, if the Premier League allowed that to be put forward, the teams would vote for it. But as of this podcast, that has not been put forward. So going back to the Crystal Palace model, what has been put forward is the coefficient, the delta between the coefficient of the best team in Europe and the British team or the English team that's in Europe as well, and being able to add on those losses with that delta, because the coefficient system isn't based on merit. A lot of people have commented recently and said, "Oh, I don't think that that's going to pass," and I'm not quite so sure. It may not pass the Premier League sniff test, or it may not pass the Premier League vote. But the reason that I'm not so sure that it's a given that it won't pass is because, as we've seen with coefficients, and remember, we were coefficient FC for quite a while. English coefficients are a hot topic at the moment. Coefficients across the continent are a hot topic at the moment. Competitiveness in Europe is a hot topic. It was a big deal for English teams to be gone out of Europe as quickly as they were, and Aston Villa being the team that was in Europe as long as it was last season. And I think that what Steve Parish recognizes here is that he has put himself and the league above himself and his team. And why would he do that when he proposes this? Because he doesn't stand to gain anything by this. Doesn't stand to gain anything at all. Aston Villa stand to gain something by this. Liverpool don't stand to gain much, maybe a couple of million, because they're a great coefficient. Arsenal have a great coefficient. Man City have a great coefficient. But Villa stand to make a lot from this. And why? It's the search for more teams being in Europe. Our coefficient, let's just look at Serie A this season. Serie A have pulled the rabbit out of a hat. They've got loads of teams. They performed really, really well in European competitions this year. And they have, I think it's 9 teams in European competitions this year. All because their coefficient is high. And their coefficient is high because their teams were sustainable through Europe and through the league model, and were able to move forward and progress within European competitions. That's what Steve Parish is looking at here. He's looking to say, right, let's say we talk about the top 6 being Europe. If we get our coefficient in order, our teams start winning in Europe, start winning competitions, start doing what we need to do within the European structure again, and get back to the top of the European game with the new rewarding of spaces and the way that the European places are rewarded. He's looking at potentially giving England, the English League, down as far as 7th, as far as 8th, as far as 9th, maybe. I couldn't even go with the permutations, but there are permutations that could go that low. Places within Europe. And Steve Parish probably thinks he has a shot at regularly getting in the top 8 or the top 9 in the league every single year and getting into Europe that way. And then obviously being in Europe, being able to attract players. So I think Steve Parish, it's only for a 1-year deal, this, but I think what he's doing is he's looking to maybe get this in for a 1-year deal, and then maybe you can build it into the plan then going forward, or you can maybe manipulate it or change it. And it seems to be very much a situation whereby he's looking at, okay, he's not going along the line of what a lot of other clubs are going is, if I don't get everything I want, nobody's getting anything, and it's a straight line vote of yes or no. He's kind of going, let's incrementally and progressively change 1 or 2 little things here, see the benefits of that to 1 or 2 clubs, maybe get more clubs into Europe, and then let's try and massage the situation from there on out. And I like that approach, because it is very much a case of there's an us against them feeling between the clubs in the Premier League at the moment in a lot of areas, particularly with VAR and also the PSR. But there's also an us against them feeling between clubs and clubs at the moment. And surprisingly, Villa have gone with the them, I think, group in this situation as opposed to the us, if that makes sense. So by trying to bring in this small change for 1 year only, knowing that there's a good chance that it will get passed for 1 year, knowing that the squad cost ratio is going to be coming in 2025, 26, if there's tangible benefits to this when it does come in, well, then what they would probably be able to do is put it to another vote the year after and go, how's about we enter this in future to give us that competitiveness? And then the selling point for that is the Brightons, the Crystal Palaces, the Aston Villas, the teams that are going to be back on the up again, the Brentfords, whoever feels that they have a good shot of finishing essentially in the top half of the league. 8th, 9th, they have a good shot, if our coefficient is good, of getting into Europe. And obviously an extra couple of million, when I say couple here, I mean like 20 to 30 million, will give teams a bigger opportunity to do that. So that's why I think that it isn't an absolutely given that this is not voted for. I think that teams will vote for this. It may not pass, but I think teams will vote for this. I think that the teams that have aspirations of finishing in the lower top half of the table will see the benefits to this, and I think it will be sold by Steve Parish to other chairmen with that in mind. And I think that it's something that, money doesn't cure all problems. I think there will be other conversations about maybe resting time, as teams progress, like Villa got done against Lille, Lille had a full week between games. Olympiacos the exact same, just the way that the games fell. But I think that there'll be other conversations around that. But obviously money helps. And I think in this instance, if this is passed, obviously it's a big boon for Aston Villa. But I think there's a longer game involved in this. And I think if my hunch is correct, I think you have to credit Steve Parish and his progressive and forward-thinking way of trying to improve the league. And I think that's the way clubs should be looking at, trying to improve the league as opposed to trying to improve their own specific situation. So that's going to do it for me this morning. Apologies about the previous one earlier on. I don't know why it didn't upload with any sound. Hopefully you could get the sound on this one. But thanks a million. And as I say, I'm nearly out of this funk. I've been ill for the last couple of weeks, and as I say, it's so the energy is beginning to come back, and I might even be back on later on today with some more, because there's a couple of nice players that Villa have been linked with, a couple of interesting players that we've not heard of before, so I might come back and do one or two scouting series. There's one guy I've been watching, Archie Gray, actually. I might come back and I might do a piece on him later on, because I find him very interesting. So stay tuned for that. But thanks so much, everybody, for watching and listening. Apologies about the previous one, and let everybody know that there is now a proper version of this up with sound. So thanks a million. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up to Villa.